Folks, I've been around the block a time or two, and I've read my fair share of books, some about investing, some about life, and a few that straddle both. Now, when it comes to Sun Tzu's The Art of War, I'd say it's one of those rare books that's as much about business as it is about life. Even though it was written some 2,500 years ago for folks planning battles with swords and spears. I've got my yellow legal pad here, and I'm going to walk you through what I think about this book, why it's worth your time, and how it fits into the way I look at the world, whether that's picking stocks, running Berkshire Hathaway, or just trying to live a sensible life. So, grab a cherry Coke, sit back, and let's talk about The Art of War like we're chatting at the annual meeting in Omaha. First off, let me say that The Art of War isn't one of those books you read once and put on the shelf to gather dust. It's shorter than the annual reports I write for Berkshire, but it's packed with ideas that stick with you, like a good dividend-paying stock. Sun Tzu wasn't just writing about how to win a battle. He was laying out a way to think about competition, strategy, and human nature. And if you've ever tried to navigate a boardroom, a market, or even a family reunion, you know those things matter just as much today as they did in ancient China. One of the big ideas in The Art of War that jumps out at me is Sun Tzu's focus on winning without fighting. He says, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Now, that's a principle I can get behind. In investing, the best victories don't come from outsmarting someone in a heated bidding war or chasing a hot stock everyone's fighting over. They come from being patient, doing your homework, and finding opportunities where you don't have to slug it out. Take Berkshire's acquisition of See's Candies back in 1972. We didn't get into a bidding war or try to outmuscle anyone. We saw a good business with a loyal customer base, a strong brand, and pricing power. Sun Tzu might have called that terrain you can hold without a fight. We paid a fair price, and that business has been throwing off cash for us ever since, like a well-defended fortress. No need to storm the castle when you can walk in through an open gate. Sun Tzu's all about preparation, and that's something I've preached for years. He says, "Every battle is won before it is fought." That's not just poetry, it's the truth. In the stock market, you don't win by making a snap decision in the heat of the moment. You win by studying businesses for years, understanding their moats, what Charlie Munger and I call their competitive advantages, and waiting for the right price. When we bought shares of Coca-Cola in the late 1980s, it wasn't because I woke up one morning and had a gut feeling. We'd been watching that company for decades, seeing how its brand grew stronger, how its distribution network spread, and how people kept reaching for a Coke no matter where they were in the world. By the time we bought, the battle was already won. We just had to sign the paperwork. Sun Tzu would have nodded at that one, I think. Now, let's talk about terrain, because Sun Tzu's got a lot to say about knowing the ground you're fighting on. He writes, "Know the enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without disaster." In business, the terrain is the market, the industry, the economy. You've got to know your own strengths, your capital, your team, your circle of competence, and you've got to know what you're up against. Are you competing with a low-cost operator? A company with a better brand? A disruptor with new technology? Back in the 1960s, I made the mistake of buying a textile mill, thinking I could turn it around. I didn't know the terrain well enough. Textiles were a tough, low-margin business, and I was fighting a losing battle against cheaper overseas competitors. It took me years to unwind that mistake, and it taught me to stick to businesses I understand, like insurance or consumer goods. Sun Tzu would have probably told me to scout the ground better before charging in. Another thing I admire about The Art of War is how Sun Tzu emphasizes discipline. He talks about the importance of organization, of keeping your army, or your team, focused and aligned. He says, if soldiers are not disciplined, it is the fault of the general. That hits home when you're running a company like Berkshire with dozens of subsidiaries and thousands of employees. I've always believed in hiring good people and giving them room to run their businesses, but you've still got to set the tone. At Berkshire, We've got a culture of integrity and long-term thinking, and that's no accident. It's like Sun Tzu's army. You don't just throw a bunch of folks together and hope for the best. You build a system where everyone knows the mission, and you trust them to execute it. When we acquired companies like Geico or BNSF, we didn't micromanage. We picked great generals, like Tony Nicely at Geico or Matt Rose at BNSF, and let them do their jobs. That's discipline, Sun Tzu style. Sun Tzu also talks about deception, which I'll admit makes me a little uneasy. He says, all warfare is based on deception. Now, I'm not one for playing tricks or hiding the truth. Charlie and I have always been straight shooters in our letters to shareholders. But I think what Sun Tzu's getting at is the importance of keeping your cards close to your chest. In business, you don't always want your competitors to know your next move. When we were building our stake in Apple a few years back, we didn't go around broadcasting it. We bought quietly, piece by piece, because if the market knew Berkshire was piling in, the price would have shot up before we could build our position. That's not deception in a bad way. It's just being smart about your strategy, like Sun Tzu advises. One of my favorite parts of The Art of War is Sun Tzu's focus on economy of force. He says, in the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. That's a lesson a lot of folks in business could learn. Too many companies get caught up in scorched earth tactics, price wars, hostile takeovers, or burning through cash to crush a competitor. But the best wins are the ones where you come out stronger without leaving a mess. When we bought Dairy Queen in 1998, we didn't try to reinvent the business or gut its operations. We saw a great brand with a simple model, and we kept it intact, letting it grow under its own steam. That's winning the Sun Tzu way, taking the prize without breaking it. Now, let's talk about leadership, because The Art of War has plenty to say about what makes a good general. Sun Tzu lists qualities like wisdom, sincerity, courage, and discipline. I'd add one more, humility. A good leader knows what they don't know, and they surround themselves with people who fill in the gaps. Charlie Munger's been my partner for decades, and he saved me from more dumb ideas than I can count. Sun Tzu would have liked Charlie. He's the kind of guy who'd tell a general the truth about the terrain, even if it wasn't what they wanted to hear. At Berkshire, we've built a team of managers who are smarter than me in their own fields, and I don't pretend to know more about, say, insurance underwriting than Ajit Jain. That's leadership, knowing your strengths, admitting your limits, and trusting your lieutenants. Sun Tzu's also big on adaptability, which is critical in business. He says, water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. Markets change, competitors evolve, and technology shifts the battlefield. If you're rigid, you're done for. Look at what happened to Kodak or Blockbuster. They didn't adapt to the new terrain, and they got left behind. At Berkshire, we've tried to stay flexible, moving from textiles to insurance to railroads to tech. When I started investing in Apple, some folks thought I'd lost my marbles, Warren Buffett buying a tech stock. But I saw a company with a moat as wide as the Mississippi, and I wasn't too stubborn to wade in. That's what Sun Tzu means by flowing like water. Another lesson from The Art of War that resonates with me is the idea of timing. Sun Tzu says, opportunities multiply as they are seized. In investing, timing isn't about day trading or chasing trends. It's about recognizing when the stars align. Back in 2008, during the financial crisis, a lot of folks were panicking, but I saw an opportunity. We invested in Goldman Sachs and General Electric, getting favorable terms because we moved when others were frozen. That's not luck. It's knowing the terrain, preparing in advance, and striking when the moment's right. Sun Tzu would have called it seizing the initiative. Now, I don't want to give the impression that The Art of War is some kind of magic formula for success. It's not. It's a framework, a way of thinking about strategy and competition. You still have to do the work, read the 10Ks, study the industry, talk to customers. And you've got to have the right temperament. Sun Tzu talks about staying calm under pressure, and that's something I've tried to do my whole career. The stock market's a wild place. Prices swing, headlines scream, and people lose their heads. But if you've got a clear strategy and a long-term view, you can tune out the noise. That's why I tell folks to buy businesses they'd be happy to own for 10 years, not 10 days. Sun Tzu would have understood that. Focus on the war, not the skirmish. One thing I appreciate about the art of war is how universal it is. It's not just for generals or CEOs. It's for anyone facing a challenge. Whether you're running a small business, negotiating a deal, or just trying to get your kids to do their homework, Sun Tzu's ideas apply. Know your strengths, pick your battles, stay disciplined, and be ready to adapt. That's not just strategy, it's common sense, the kind my dad taught me back in Omaha. Now, I'll be honest, there are parts of the art of war that feel a little cold-blooded. Sun Tzu's not afraid to talk about exploiting weaknesses or cutting off an enemy's supply lines. In business, I'd rather compete by building a better product or serving customers better than by trying to kneecap the other guy. But I think Sun Tzu's point is about realism. You've got to understand how the world works, even the parts that aren't pretty. In investing, you're not always up against nice folks. There are short sellers, activist investors, and competitors who'll play hardball. You don't have to play dirty, but you do have to know the game. As I wrap up, let me say that The Art of War is one of those books that grows with you. I first read it years ago, and I keep coming back to it, finding new lessons each time. It's like a good annual report. You can read it once and get the gist, but the real value comes from studying it, thinking about it, and applying it to your own situation. For me, it's a reminder to stay patient, stay prepared, and stay focused on the long game. Whether you're running a company, investing in the market, or just trying to live a good life, those are principles that'll serve you well. So my advice? Give The Art of War a read. It's not long, probably shorter than my letters to shareholders, and it's got more wisdom per page than most books out there. Then, think about how it applies to your own battles, whatever they may be. And if you're ever in Omaha, stop by for a Dairy Queen Sunday, and we'll talk strategy. Just don't ask me to lead any actual armies. I'll stick to picking stocks.